So, welcome to season 4, episode 4 of the Me and ADHD podcast. In this episode, we are doing some more educational explorations, and this time we're talking about ADHD and nutrition. And more to the point, highlight the facts and also the ever-present myths of what we hear all the time, especially on social media and in the news, which can be quite confusing at times. So with me then for this conversation, I have been joined by dietitian Jade Morrison. So welcome, Jade.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
How are we doing today?
Yeah, good. I think it's a really important conversation to have, especially when you said about the things in the news are really confusing, because I think I hear that a lot from clients in terms of, well, one thing says I should do this and one thing says I should do that, and I don't know what to do. So I think it'd be really good to bust some myths today.
Which is good, because let's say the news, you like to think the news would be truthful, but it sensationalizes things, and unfortunately, stuff headlines saying that this whatever could cause cancer, but it doesn't tell you that you'd have to eat 4 tons of it per year, to get cancer. It's like that. We hear that, and I've heard that so many times over the years. Through what I used to do in my career, it was never really factual what you got told about nutrition, unless you're going through training. Everything else was just someone said this, someone said that, and it's not a lot of research behind it. So, but we're going to talk about some of that today, which is good.
Will do.
So first of all, so you're a dietitian.
Yes.
So in the UK, what is the fundamental difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
Yeah. So my route into dietetics, so I went to university for 5 years. I did a first year in biology and chemistry because I didn't have science A levels, and then I did a 4-year course. So I think the main difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist is that dietitians are regulated in terms of they have to go to university. Well, nowadays you can do apprenticeships through the NHS, but when I qualified, you had to go to university. You'll do a 4-year degree, you'll do clinical placements, and exactly what we were talking about at the start, we talk about nutrition, but we do it in an evidence-based way. So the things that we talk about are backed by good quality evidence. Not always, because the world of eating disorders and neurodivergence, there's lots of variation, there's lots of differences. So sometimes we do look at practice-based evidence, which is a fancy way of saying what works for the person. So that's how I try to work. But with nutrition, it's an unregulated industry. So technically you could go away and do an hour course in nutrition and then call yourself a nutritionist. There are processes that you can go through in terms of registering with the Association for Nutrition. You can get professional insurance and things like that, but it's not a requirement of the role. Whereas if you're a dietitian, you have to be regulated, you have to be insured, you have to give evidence-based nutrition advice, and evidence-based nutrition advice for particular medical conditions. A nutritionist technically shouldn't advise around things like diabetes, eating disorders, celiac disease, those sorts of things. But I'm aware that lots of nutritionists do if they've got extra qualifications and training. So I guess the key differences are around evidence, regulation, qualifications, and just sort of the route into whether you become a dietitian or nutritionist.
Okay. So did the training cover the relationship between food, nutrition, and supplements in relation to neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD?
No.
No.
It didn't. Not my dietetic training, no. It might be a bit better now, because even when I trained, I think in the 4-year course, we had a 2-hour lecture on eating disorders, and that was it for the whole course. So I think from the students that are coming through, they are getting better, at talking about mental health, eating disorders, neurodivergence. I think there's still a long way to go, but most of my experience in this area has been through my own lived experience, so caring for someone with diabetes and ADHD, going through my own process of being diagnosed autistic, through my son, so lived experience and extra webinars and training that I've done. But nothing, even though I've done extra training and webinar, I don't think anything is a better lesson than what you get from your clients in terms of their own experience. So that is the best learning, because that's where you learn like the real life nuances of ADHD. You can read about it in books, you can attend a webinar, but nothing can prepare you for that person's experience. So I think the best bits of learning I've had has been from my clients, really.
Awesome. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And also, because we're talking about the nutrition side and with ADHD,
Yeah.
I mean, you're neurodivergent yourself and you live in a neurodivergent household.
Yeah.
So this kind of, I guess, like you said, it hits home for you because that lived experience. And
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you think about the constant posting about that, about food and nutrients and supplements that that you get online all the time, and how to treat your ADHD symptoms, and have this and it'll clear your head. And
Yeah.
what do you think?
I I I tend to run a mile when I see those sorts of posts. I tend to avoid it because I always get this sense of pressure and this sense of like they're trying to sell me something. So I'll always sort of like avoid. And then I do go and look and think, right, who is this person, and are they actually qualified to give this advice? And I will have a look. But I generally just avoid it. I don't tend to get sort of swept into it. However, I think that's because I'm a dietitian and I know that I'm supposed to kind of follow things in terms of the evidence base. If you're not a clinician and you're not a professional, I can see how you would get, down those sort of routes and get sort of sucked into that kind of messaging, because not everyone has the luxury of accessing ADHD medication. Some people don't have a pathway locally, or they can't afford to pay for a private prescription. So if you've got someone on social media saying, take this supplement and it will help you focus, it will help you concentrate, it will clear your head, of course you're going to want to give it a go, because you want to focus, you want to concentrate, and you want all of those things. So I think it's really important to try and do your research into the person and whether they are genuinely selling a product, or pushing a message that is evidence based, or if they are essentially trying to sell you something, I suppose.
Yeah, that's one of the things I kind of like go by as well, is, are they
Mm.
worth listening to? Are they just trying to sell me their own supplements or their own
Yeah.
products? If they're trying to sell me their own stuff and they're poo-pooing everything else, I'm just gonna, no,
Yeah.
I'll move on. Yeah, it's really hard to understand where to get the information from.
Yeah.
Is there something, be a website or anything like that, that you can get evidence-based information? So if the layperson can go, right, okay, I want to know more about nutrition, I'm ADHD, I want
Yeah.
to know what can help me, what doesn't help, where can I go?
Yeah. So our as dietitians, our professional body is called the British Dietetic Association, or BDA. So the BDA have a website that you can go onto, and there are what we call food fact sheets, and they have lots of different ones on there around diabetes, heart health, cholesterol. There's some around eating disorders as well. You can go on there and you can get the food fact sheets, and they're about a page or two. They're really colourful. They've got pictures, they've got sections, they've got headings. So they really break down the information. So I would say if you've been diagnosed with a condition and you're not sure kind of what advice to follow, the BDA is a really good place. If you just put into Google BDA food fact sheets, there's lots of really helpful information on there.
Okay.
There's also a really good website called the Centre for Clinical Intervention, so CCI, and that is specifically for eating disorders. So if there's anyone listening who's got ADHD, but they're also struggling with eating differences or an eating disorder. The Centre for Clinical Intervention has got some really good balanced information about eating disorders. So there would
That's good
be
to know.
there would be two places I would say to kind of look for information,
Okay. I'll
balanced information. Yeah,
yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I'll put those links onto the
Okay.
podcast. You
Yeah,
will
yeah.
need to remind me after this,
I
though.
will send them to you. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
please.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bust some myths then. Let's have a look at some of the
Yeah.
things. I came up with a list of stuff and sent it over to
Hmm.
you, obviously, so you can have
Yeah.
a look at.
Yeah.
But these are things that I've sort of been reading about. I
Hmm.
see a lot in there about ADHD and how they can help.
Hmm.
Um, so here goes. The first one, right? Omega-3. So widely considered the most researched supplement for ADHD,
Hmm.
often taken as fish oil to improve attention and reduce hyperactivity. That's what I got. That's the information.
Yeah.
How
So
is that?
that is true. There's lots of
Yes.
evidence out there. So that's probably the strongest one, omega-3. So there's lots of evidence about omega-3, specifically from people with ADHD. So we know that omega-3 is really good for brain health, really good for focus, concentration, all those things that you might struggle with ADHD. There's some really good quality evidence out there. And I think the thing to say, though, is that it's an add-on. It's not going to cure ADHD, and anyone that's marketing it that way, that's completely false. It's an add-on, and it can help improve a balanced general kind of diet. It's an accompaniment rather than a cure-all.
Yeah.
But I would say that omega-3 has probably got the strongest evidence in terms of ADHD. Saying that, if you eat oily fish, so if you eat things like salmon or sea bass or mackerel or any of those sorts of things, one portion of oily fish a week could be enough for your omega-3s. It's just if you don't eat fish or you've got sensory sensitivities around particularly oily fish, so not white fish like cod or haddock, you're looking at your trout, your sardines, your mackerel, your salmon, those sorts of things. If you have those once a week, you don't necessarily need to have a supplement. And I think that's the key with all of these supplements. If you're getting them from your diet and or you're not deficient in them, you generally don't need them. So I think that's really important to sort of highlight.
Yeah. No, that's a key thing as well.
Yeah,
If the things that you generally need to function and be healthy, if
yeah,
you're eating enough of it and it's in your body and you're getting 100% of what you need,
yeah.
you don't need any more.
Don't need it.
But
Yeah.
if you're lacking,
Yes.
and then you find that omega-3s is brilliant, well, it's probably because you're lacking so much that it's actually
Yeah.
now that supplement's taking you up to where you should be,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Lion's mane. So a medicinal fungus widely marketed for its potential to improve focus, mental clarity, and memory. I've never taken this. I
Yeah,
don't.
neither have I. I have heard of it. I've heard of this one alongside something called, have you heard of ashwagandha?
Oh,
That's another one
yeah,
that
yeah. I didn't put it on
tends
the
to
list yet.
kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, that tends to kind of sort of float around. So if we're looking at omega-3 as having like the best evidence, we're looking at lion's mane and ashwagandha having like the lowest quality of evidence. So there is some evidence around lion's mane in terms of focus and attention, but it's based on animal studies rather than people studies. So that's one thing. So it's not actually been tested on people with ADHD. So what we're doing is we're pulling information from an animal study and we're saying, well, this improves attention and concentration in these animals, so it might do the same in human beings. And with the ashwagandha, it's more of the evidence is around focus and attention in non-ADHD populations, but also in sort of older populations around sort of focus, attention, and memory. So again, it's not specifically for ADHD people.
Yeah.
It's just where they've kind of taken the evidence and they've almost sort of like extrapolated it and applied it to ADHDers. And a lot of social media influencers have thought, well, ashwagandha is really good for stress. I know what we can do. We can push it as a cure-all for ADHD burnout. So they've sort of made a link. It's called biological plausibility. This works in this area, so it might work in this area. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Yeah.
I see that a lot. I do see that a lot in things, and they come up with the science, and the science is
Mm-hmm.
because it did this in mice, or it did this
Yes.
in flies, it did this in.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's not quite the same, you know.
Yeah.
Um, all right then, here we go, another one. So magnesium. Okay.
Yeah.
Frequently used for calming the brain, improving sleep, and reducing hyperactivity.
So there is really good evidence for magnesium around sort of the calming effects and specifically sleep, but the evidence tends to be that if you're deficient in it. So with a lot of the minerals, so when you're thinking about things like magnesium, zinc, iron, there's really strong evidence that ADHD people, especially ADHD children, are generally deficient in these minerals. So if they're deficient, then you replace it, you see an improvement in things like hyperactivity, attention, focus, executive function. But there's a caution with these in terms of you shouldn't really be taking them if you're not deficient in them in the first place.
Okay. How do you
Yeah.
find out if you're deficient or not?
So you'd need to go to your GP or book a private blood test. So if you can tolerate having a blood test, that is the way to definitely know if you're deficient in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. L-theanine or theanine.
I think it's L-theanine.
Theanine. It's an amino acid found in green tea.
I was going to say I don't don't trust anything I can't pronounce. I think there's two, isn't there? L-theanine,
And there's
L-tyrosine.
tyrosine. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both amino acids, and amino acids are like the building blocks of proteins. So again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier in terms of if you're not getting enough protein, you shouldn't really be topping up the amino acids, which are the building blocks of the protein. So I would be saying, if I had a client who was saying, I'm considering these supplements, I'd be looking at their diet and making sure, have they got good quality sources of protein in there? Something like a chicken breast or some Greek yogurt or a portion of cheese or some chickpeas that can give you those amino acids. So again, if you've got the foundations stable and you've looked at kind of the bigger picture in terms of your diet, and then you decide you want to have those supplements on top of it, then that's when you'd think about these sorts of things. But I wouldn't recommend these supplements every day for just because. It's sort of like an add-on, like the omega-3s.
Okay. Would it be okay to suggest that if you're a big meat eater, okay, that you should be okay with those two, L-theanine and L-tyrosine? If you're a meat eater, I mean, I eat meat every day. I'm so far from being a vegetarian or a vegan. So would that be?
Yes,
Yeah,
I would say, yeah. So definitely, meat, yogurt, milk, cheese, all those sorts of things. If you're generally getting enough good quality, which meat is, meat is the most bioavailable source of iron and it's the highest, grams of protein per portion, you should be covered. And I think that's the thing. With all of these supplements, it should really be about, do you need it? And if you don't need it, I would recommend not to add it. But obviously, if you need it, like you've got a deficiency or you really don't have enough protein in your diet, then you could consider these things. But before I recommend an amino acid supplement, I'd be recommending like a shake or something that's got a good quality amount of protein in it rather than the specifics. And I think that was one of the things I picked up on when I was doing my research is I think when we're neurodivergent, we can become very zoomed in to the detail that we forget to kind of zoom out and think of the bigger picture. And, you can do all the research in the world around, amino acids and lion's mane, ashwagandha, omega-3. But if the fundamental aspects of your diet aren't where they need to be, that is where your attention should go first. So thinking about are you eating regularly? Have you got the carbs for energy? Have you got your proteins, your fiber, those sorts of things before you start thinking about the fancy stuff. So it's like having a house that's crumbling and needs a new roof, but you're building a fancy extension on the side with all the high tech
Yeah.
sort of gizmos. It's like, if you haven't sorted out your house, we don't need the fancy add-ons just yet. So let's get the house solid, and then we can think about what do we need to add in.
I
That
quite like
makes
that
sense.
analogy. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
get your house in order and then add on all the put the drive on and the extension would be my advice anyway.
Okay.
Can I just say, sorry, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, in terms of the evidence around lion's mane and ashwagandha and some of these, I think with the minerals, the message is generally don't supplement unless you're deficient. But with the lion's mane and ashwagandha, although the evidence isn't strong, that doesn't mean that people shouldn't consider it. Because I've had lots of clients that have taken things like ashwagandha and, you know, they swear by it. It really helps with their anxiety. It really helps with their mood. So although the evidence isn't there, we can talk about, you know, people's real life experience with it. But also, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it. It just means that we can't be 100% confident on whether it's going to help you. And if we can't be 100% confident if it's going to help you, we also can't be 100% confident on what the risks are of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, with any of these things, I would always say, if you are able to, always discuss it with a clinician or a professional, and they can guide you. They can look at your bloods, they can look at your medications, they can look at any interactions, and they can say, well, actually, I wouldn't recommend you take that because you've got this medication prescribed by your GP, or this could interact with that. And then what they're doing is they're supporting you to make an informed decision, rather than you just going in blindly and, you know, taking advice from an influencer on social media about it. You're at least going into the decision with the knowledge of these are the benefits, but these are also the risks as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what social media doesn't discuss enough is, okay, these are all these lovely benefits of this supplement, but what are the risks of these? And what are the risks to me personally, considering I have this condition or I'm on this medication? So it's about that personalized advice, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Excuse me. Because if you haven't, if the science isn't there,
Mm-hmm.
you can't go by the science. You can only go by what's worked or what hasn't worked for you.
Yeah.
And I guess it's fair to say that, you know, if you take lion's mane and it's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant for you,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to say it's really worked really well for
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yes.
And it's probably not the best thing to say, this works really well for people with ADHD,
Yeah.
and this is what you want to do, and do a blanket claim,
Yeah.
because, you know, just like anything else, you know, it's not guaranteed at all. Even with the science, even the ADHD
Exactly.
medications,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of science behind ADHD meds,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of science, a lot of studies.
Yeah.
However, it's still not guaranteed
No.
to work for you. So you can't say to people, it will do this for you. This is what it's meant to do. Let's see where it go with it. But, you
Yeah.
know, so
Let's give it a good try. And I think that is a, you know, if we're thinking about messages that we're getting on social media, that's a huge red flag. If they're saying it's going to work for everyone every time, it's a bit like a Google review, isn't it? If it's all too positive, I start thinking this isn't true. This has got to be false. So, you know, anyone making huge sweeping statements about, you know, take this supplement and it will solve all your problems in this area. You know, like you say, I'm cautious around things that have lots of science behind them. You know, if you take an antidepressant, for example, you could have 100 people take that antidepressant and have 100 different experiences. Some will swear by it, and some will have the most horrendous side effects. So, yeah, it's just trying to be a little bit cautious about who you're getting the messaging from
yeah,
and what their intention is, and would they be saying the same thing if they weren't getting paid to say it. Is a really good key behind that. And you'll rarely find a dietitian who's being paid to market a particular product, because that's part of our registration, that we're not allowed to say you must go for this. Now, I do that in my practice because I am working with people who need concrete information and they need to know which one should we go for. But in that conversation, we'll be talking about all the different opportunities and options that are available. It won't just be go for this product because I get a commission for if you buy it, which can happen with influencers a lot of the time, actually.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
that's not good. I don't like any of that stuff.
No.
Because it goes back to when I used to work in health club, when I first started working out, working in health club, and I started working out as well, obviously. And
Mhm.
you get a magazine, you buy a magazine, and you get ripped abs in 8 weeks, or build big arms in 8 weeks, and they give you like 3 exercises and a routine to do, and you go, oh great, fantastic, that will work. And then sort of 6 months later, there'll be another article, get big arms in 10 weeks, and they're different exercises, and like, what? So 8 weeks didn't work, and those exercises didn't work, and okay. So there is
Yeah.
different ways to do things, different ways to approach things, and not everything is going to work. But you need, I guess, if nothing else, rely on the science at a base level. Go where the science is telling you and work it from there, rather than ignoring the science and going with what an influencer or your mate told you, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So
Because other than that, it can be really harmful. If you're on a certain medication and someone's saying, take this supplement because it will cure your ADHD, and you don't realize that that supplement actually interacts with your prescribed medication for your blood sugars or your thyroid, or whatever other condition you've got, that could actually cause you harm. And if you're getting advice from, say, an unregulated professional or an influencer, there's no safety net around that. It's just you do it and you get the harm, and then you're sort of left with that. So I think if you go with the science as the baseline, then you kind of build from there in terms of like lived experience and anecdotal studies, recommendations, that sort of thing.
okay, because
Yeah.
the oh, what was I going to say? The when you get into supplements, this supplements industry, I guess, is
Mhm.
that regulated or not? Do you know?
No,
It's
not
not.
to the degree that medicines are. So if you get a medicines prescribed by your GP, it is regulated. It has to go through lots of, clinical tests, clinical trials. They have to they have to declare the side effects. For example, you'll get like the leaflet with, I don't know if you ever read that. I do. There's millions of different side effects on there. Whereas the supplement industry comes under food supplements. So that's less regulated. There's less of a threshold in terms of getting something like on the shelf. You can make somewhat sweeping statements in terms of this will improve your focus and concentration and memory without having to necessarily prove that it would with a clinical trial. Um, so there might be evidence that it does do what it says, but it might not be as clear as they're making it seem. It's probably a little bit more sort of shaky ground, really, in
Yeah,
terms of the backing for it.
and I guess as well, if it's not that regulated, then maybe you can't guarantee that the levels of whatever ingredients are exactly
Mhm.
as they say on the
As they
packet.
say on there, yeah, or in the sort of preparation that they say that it is. So it might be that they change something quite subtle around the supplement, but then they don't declare that on the label on the back, and then that can have an impact in terms of medication and things like that. So yeah, it's a minefield out there, and there's so much conflicting information that often you can feel like I don't know which way to turn. But I think if you start with the basics and then build from there, and I think it's important with supplements to just try one at a time. I think often what people do is they get really excited and they start taking three or four, and they don't know which ones have the benefit, which one's causing the side effect. So with my clients, I'll always say, try one. So if you're going to try one and give it a good amount of time, whether that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, to see if there really is any benefit for you. And if there isn't, then probably stop it or carry it on, whichever you feel like doing. But if there's any clear side effects, then stop. But I see lots of people down the supplement aisle buying lots of different things, and just because they're herbal and just because they're natural doesn't mean they don't interact with each other.
Yeah.
They can have quite a big impact on each other. So one at a time, and give it a good go, like you would with a prescription medication.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's weird how we do things. We see things differently, but we
Yeah.
should think of it the same thing. We don't go and take lots of different prescription medication for exactly the
No.
same thing unless it's prescribed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You do one at a time, and if that doesn't work, then you either add on or change, kind of thing,
Yeah.
with advice from someone who's qualified. Um, so yeah, that's good advice. Very good
Yeah.
advice.
I think it's linked to the marketing as well. When you're seeing things like natural, herbal, plant-based, you start to think, oh well, what's the harm? But actually, that, like we said, like we've discussed, there can be sort of side effects to these things. So I think a lot of the marketing has a lot to answer for that, because they're encouraging you to buy multiple different things, and have this for your sleep, and this for your concentration, and this for your mood, and but they don't talk about how the different things are linked and can interact.
Yeah, that is important, because there are quite a lot of things out there that you shouldn't take at the same time, be it
Mhm.
either at the same time when you consume it, or have it
Yeah,
at all when you're having something, depending on what product it is. There's
yeah,
lots of things with my ADHD meds that I shouldn't have, or my blood pressure medication that I shouldn't have.
yeah.
Just the same as with a lot of other things. There's
Mhm.
you got to be careful. You've got
Yeah.
to do your little bit of research in there. Try and speak
Mhm.
to the people who know.
Yeah.
Um,
And can at least give you the right information, because even like you say with prescription medications, so if you take something like an iron supplement, so it's really good to take vitamin C with an iron supplement because that helps your body absorb it. But if you take your iron supplement at the same time as calcium, so milk or yogurt, it can stop your body from absorbing it. So it's that sort of information that actually some people don't realize all the time, even with the prescription medication.
yeah, I've only kind of really just learned that in the last 6 or so months. Just regarding how I've changed my eating, and the combination of things, and how that can sort of help. I'm like, well, okay, then it's the same everywhere else. That they can make a difference. All right
Yeah.
then. Okay, so have we done zinc? No, zinc. We've done zinc. We haven't done zinc,
Zinc,
have we? Zinc.
yeah, I think there was, when I was looking into zinc, I think that again, it was around the deficiency of zinc. So if you're deficient in zinc, if your zinc is low, you generally find in children that they can be a little bit more hyperactive, they can be a little bit more impulsive, and that once you supplement them with the zinc and you bring it back up to sort of normal levels, then those symptoms sort of settle. But I think zinc, iron, magnesium are those ones where they are quite tightly controlled within the body. So it's really important not to take zinc if you're not deficient in it. So um, my son actually had a zinc deficiency, and because of his sensory sensitivities around food, I couldn't get a zinc supplement in him. Luckily, it then sort of came back up naturally on its own. But yeah, it's one of those ones that it's definitely not good to supplement it if you don't need it.
So if you did, what kind of things can happen? We're talking about the zinc, iron, and magnesium, like you just said.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're not deficient, but you're taking supplements for them. You're
mhm,
going well over the recommended, you know,
yeah,
amount that you have. What sort of things
yeah.
can happen?
So you can get to a point where you actually get to levels of what's called toxicity in your blood. So then you can get some really strong side effects. So I know that if you take too much vitamin D, for example, you can get lots of headaches, you can get diarrhea, you can get those sort of physical like feelings of feeling quite sick and nauseous. So it's really important that you don't take too much of it, because of that it can become quite toxic in your body. The body has such a good way of regulating itself, of regulating what it needs in very fine margins. So even with my eating disorder clients who have very restrictive diets, generally their body can adapt over time to sort of compensate for the lack of things in their eating. So I think, again, like taking it back to that blood test, you need to really, the only way to really know if you've got a deficiency or not is to have a blood test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we talked about vitamin D just then as well. We've got vitamin D. Research indicates children with ADHD often have lower levels. Supplementation may support cognitive function and mood.
Yeah.
So is that, I mean, I'm reading that and I didn't know that about vitamin D, but is that something that is a thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a huge link between vitamin D and mood. A lot of people in the UK are deficient in vitamin D. Our main source of vitamin D is sunlight. So if you are deficient, we always recommend like getting outside, a bit of sunshine on your skin during the summer months. But I do find that when people are deficient in vitamin D, their mood can be lower, but then they usually got lots of other things going on. So whether the mood being lower is linked to other things, who knows? But I think, especially if you've got dark skin, so people that are black and darker skin are less likely to absorb vitamin D from the sun. So we see a lot of deficiencies in certain cultures. So I think,
I did not know that.
yeah, because of the melatonin in our skin. So if your skin's darker, you've got more melatonin, and the melatonin actually blocks the ability for you to absorb the vitamin D from the sun. So
that is interesting. My dad's Jamaican. I'm mixed race, and it's that's never knew that. Never knew that's something you don't think about. But okay.
Yeah. And it is quite, I think a lot with a lot of these minerals, although we're saying only supplement them if you're deficient, the research shows that a lot of neurodivergent people are deficient in these minerals. So even if you can't access a blood test, you could talk with a professional or a clinician around some symptoms that you think might be linked to deficiency, and then look at whether you then say supplement vitamin D. If you've got dark skin, you might say, well, actually it's, my eating's quite restrictive because of my ADHD. I've got dark skin. I'm less likely to absorb it from the sun. There's a likelihood I'm deficient in it. I'll start with just a low dose of over-the-counter vitamin D supplement, but I'll discuss it with my GP or whoever you're working with, just to see their advice on it as well, because they can go through your diet and see if you're actually getting sources of vitamin D, and then say, well, actually, with all of these things together, I think it's worth you trying the supplement if you can't get a blood test or you're not able to tolerate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with these, I mean, we've talked a bit a second ago about sort of zinc, iron, magnesium, all those things. What it says, what the claim. I know obviously you need to be deficient before you take them, but like say iron is crucial for dopamine production. Supplementation is typically recommended only if a blood test is okay.
Yeah.
Not that I'm reading this off the screen or anything. Then
I've got notes.
Magnesium.
I think there is good evidence that all of these play a role in dopamine production. So or regulation or synthesis, because with iron, we know that iron is what we call a precursor to dopamine. So it's like the key that unlocks the door to let the dopamine in.
Yeah.
So we know that, when I was looking into the research, about 85% of children are deficient in iron. Now, if they're deficient, then they need to supplement it, because without enough iron, the dopamine might be there, but the door's not open and it's not getting through. So I think the claims that they make around, vitamin D and mood, magnesium and the calming effect and sleep, iron being a precursor for dopamine, I think there's really good evidence for those claims and there's really good studies. It's just that we need to know if you're deficient first before we recommend that you take them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with someone who's ADHD, they're generally sort of deficient in certain areas.
Mhm.
Is that, and I know this isn't a question that I wrote down for you, but
Well,
is that because of the biology of ADHD, or is it because of life with ADHD?
my clinical and personal opinion is it's due to life with ADHD. So it is a direct consequence and impact of the way that we eat. So if we're eating less regularly, or we've got certain foods that are, we can't tolerate because of the sensory properties of it. If our diet's quite beige, or we go through phases with food where we'll eat something, something, and something all the time, and then it will change onto something else. I think that has an impact on our blood results and our levels. I didn't come across any evidence that we are just naturally lower in it. We're naturally lower in dopamine, but I think it is a direct consequence of the way that we eat, our eating pattern, the balance of our diet. We know that fruits and vegetables are the most sensory, overwhelming sort of foods out there. You can eat a piece of fruit and one day it's crisp, one day it's mushy, one day it's sweet, one day it's sour. And that when you want that uniform kind of texture, that's really hard to kind of get your head around. So I think it is a direct result of our diet, but also the fact that living as someone who's neurodivergent, whether you know that you are or you don't, is quite stressful. So the impact that stress has on our body and our ability to eat regularly and look after ourselves just more generally, is sometimes impacted.
Yeah, it's I learned no I don't because yeah I learned the other day. I saw a thing on social media. Yeah, I know.
The
Um,
old social media.
and it's one of those things that sometimes when someone says something or you see something, and it just makes everything click in your head. Ah,
Mhm.
now I get it. Because I've always been obviously told about beige food, and
Yeah.
and okay, and I kind of get that. But then it had this is why people with sensory issues have like beige food, and
Mhm.
it got I think it's like 4 or 5 crackers, pictures of 4 or 5
Mhm.
crackers,
Yeah.
and it's the same, 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 and then it had like 4 or 5 blueberries. This one's
Mhm.
soft. This one's sort of sharp. This one's hard. This one is like, uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes
okay,
sense.
but it's still a
Yeah,
blueberry. Okay, now
I
it,
get
it,
it.
it makes real sense why people do go, they opt for the beige food because it's exactly the same.
It's predictable.
Yeah.
My son's already put in his order. Can we go to McDonald's? After this call, McDonald's is his go-to. And I think, like, for some of us, we have these sensory sensitivities. So for me, if we take blueberries as an example, I like them to be firm and a little bit sour, not too sweet. And I don't like it when you bite into it and it's all mushy inside or it kind of like pops. But I can eat those ones. I just don't like them. And I'm like, oh, and then I swallow it. Whereas for my son, his sensory sensitivities around food are so much more stronger than mine. If he picks up something and expects it to be one thing and it's something different, he then can't eat and he loses his appetite completely. The whole meal's ruined and he can't even tolerate it in his mouth. So I think for some of us, we can kind of just, grin and bear it and swallow it. And, for other people, it's really, really an aversive experience and can then impact their eating for the rest of that meal or the rest of the day,
Mm.
which we don't take into account enough, I think.
No, that's really true.
Yeah.
Um, okay then, a couple more then before we move on. But vitamin B6. Okay, often taken alongside magnesium to support neurotransmitter production and
Mhm.
reduce irritability.
So vitamin B6, well, all of the B vitamins really, if we look at them as a group, all of the B vitamins are really good for energy production. Um, the difficulty is you wouldn't ever get a blood test that tells you if you're deficient in B vitamins and whether you need them. You might get some things around vitamin B12 and folate, but not generally. And because vitamin B is a water soluble vitamin, you can take it and you don't get to toxic levels because it doesn't build up because it's flushed out of your system. But what that means is you could be paying a lot of money for I don't know, a complex B vitamin supplement and just weighing it out at the end of the day. So I don't think it's as sort of black and white in terms of the messaging around the water soluble vitamins, because ultimately if you take them and you don't need them, you will weed them out. But obviously if you don't need them, why would you take them? And it's very expensive wee. So it's one of those things, isn't it? But people do say that, a lot of my clients, they take the B vitamins and it gives energy. But again, I'd be coming back to thinking about, why are you low in energy? Are you low in energy because your general, we need to look at your diet more generally. Is it because of stress? Is it because of work? And actually taking a B vitamin isn't going to solve the work stress, the family stress, the other things that might be sort of contributing to your tiredness. So it's one of those ones where it's kind of, you can take it, see if it helps, but if you don't need it, your body's not going to absorb it or process it.
Okay. What about B12? It's got down here, and what I'm reading is critical for modular, critical for energy metabolism and cognitive function, often included in broad spectrum micronutrient blends.
If you don't eat a lot of meat,
yep,
a lot of animal products, or you're vegan, because these are your main sources of your vitamin B12, so it's your animal products. So if you don't eat those in your diet, then you highly likely need a B12 supplement. A lot of people go for like B12 injections that they might have for like every 3 months. I definitely recommend against the injections because they're quite high doses and they're generally only recommended for people that are really low in it. So you'd need a blood test before you go for an injection. But I think if you don't eat enough things like milk, cheese, meat, eggs, then you should probably consider a B12 supplement. And obviously if you're vegan, you won't be eating those animal products as well. But I was quite concerned that I stumbled across it was like a massage place, where you go get massage, facials, get your nails done, and they're just selling vitamin B12 injections. Just, come get your vitamin B12, get your energy, have your injection every 3 months. And I thought, this is supposed to be a prescribed thing under a doctor or a highly qualified nurse, and they're just advertising it along, get yourself a hot stone massage and a vitamin B12 injection at the same time. But the way that they talk about it, I find myself like, I'm getting convinced. And I'm like, no, stop. No, you don't need this, Jade. But they sell it to you in such a way. And we're all tired. Life is tiring. So when someone's saying, are you really tired? Have this injection, you'll feel full of energy. You're going to go for it, aren't you?
That's the thing. When you're desperate, I guess it's you kind of just cling on to some sort of positivity. Oh, hopefully this will work because I need to get out of where I am right now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But people prey on those people who are in those positions.
Yeah. Exactly. Vulnerable people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, right. Last one here then. Vitamin C. Now this is one I've been reading a lot on. I'm on ADHD medication. I'm on stimulant medication. It's the amphetamine based ones. Forgot what it was. And vitamin C. Don't take vitamin C when you're taking that medication because it will just stop it from working. But possibly take it after an hour after you've taken your meds, or have it an hour before. But is that really? I mean, I also read as well that they haven't, and I could be wrong with this, but this is just what I've read, that they haven't done that study itself.
Yes.
But they've looked at the acidity thing, and they've basically gone on that. So thinking, well, we'll go with that, and so don't take it. But is that?
I don't think there is any sort of strong evidence specifically, other than what you've said in terms of apparently the ADHD medication is quite alkaline in terms of pH level, whereas the orange juice or the vitamin C is quite acidic. So what happens is when you take vitamin C, so say you had a glass of orange juice and then took your medication, that orange juice has then made your stomach and your digestive tract quite acidic. So when that alkaline medication goes in, the vitamin C or the orange juice or whatever you've had almost creates like this protective barrier, and it stops the medication from being absorbed into the body. So I think what they've done is they've kind of made that a recommendation, because it's not too off the wall, is it, to sort of think about, I'll take my ADHD medication, my glass of orange juice I have in the morning, I'll just leave it till an hour afterwards. It's not it's not hindering too many people's lives, and it could help sort of you absorb the medication. So I think it's pretty good advice. Where it becomes an issue is if you're deficient in iron and you're taking vitamin C to help you absorb the iron, and then you're taking it at the same time as your ADHD medication, and then you're like, well, one helps it and one hinders it. Now I'm going to have to take, I struggle to remember to take my medication anyway, and now I'm going to have to take them separately. So it's just, again, thinking about that interaction. Some things help, some things hinder. And are you one of those people that fall into that category of, I take my iron supplement and my ADHD medication in the morning? Because we actively encourage people to take their iron supplements with a glass of orange juice to help them absorb the iron. So, yeah.
Okay, interesting one. Because that's the one I see the most personally, and it's like, do I? Don't know. I mean, well, I'm not drinking the orange juice much anyway now, so but so it doesn't affect me too much anymore. But it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And I thought,
but if you have I was going to say, if you have a fruit salad in the morning, if you have a big bowl of fruit within an hour, that's going to be really high in vitamin C. And I think sometimes when people think about the vitamin C, they think about vitamin C supplements, or they think about orange juice or grapefruit juice. They don't think about the other things that they might have at breakfast that might be higher in vitamin C that aren't that obvious glass of orange juice. So it is good to be aware of it. And yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've always been around nutrition with my career, but it's only been in the last 6 months or so that I've been really changing what I do and what I eat, and really sort of deep diving into it a little bit more and thinking about it a little bit more. And there's still a lot of things to learn, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know, with a combination of things, and what goes, what doesn't go, what can hinder something, and what's best to be taken with something else as well. And it's so it's good to have that sort of understanding, and to try and get that knowledge to make it a lot easier for yourself. But nutrition is a big thing for us ADHDers, and for neurodivergent people anyway. And that also includes kind of having sort of eating disorders as well. So it's kind of like what I've been reading. People with ADHD are no different, apart from they have, depending on which report you read, I guess, 4% increased risk of having this an eating disorder over a neurotypical person. But is that kind of true? Or are we in the same boat as everyone else, or we are more prone to having eating disorders? Is that?
Yeah. There's a lot of really strong evidence out there that people with ADHD and neurodivergent people are, there's studies that will say 5 times more likely to binge eat, or compensate and make themselves sick after eating, those sorts of things. There's a lot of evidence out there around ADHD specifically, and that impulsivity and inattention around forgetting to eat and being quite restrictive, or being quite impulsive and dopamine seeking and self-soothing with food, and falling into more of that binge eating category. And then there's a huge link with ARFID and autism and ADHD. So I think the evidence that we would rely on as dietitians is that people with ADHD and a neurodivergent are have a lot higher likelihood of having an eating disorder than the neurotypical population. So
Uh,
there definitely is that link there, and it's around all of those things around, like, see, food is the quickest, fastest way to get dopamine. If you're on ADHD medication, it's suppressed your appetite all day, and then the medication starts to wear off, and your blood sugar levels are low, and you're feeling a little bit stressed, tired, anxious. Of course, you're going to go for carbs and sugar, quick, fast, easy to grab food. You're going to be starving because your blood sugar levels are low, and you're going to overeat. And we don't always get the full signal either. So sometimes we don't get that, in terms of like our internal body signals. Like I'm terrible for things like drinking. I'm like, oh, my mouth's really dry. Oh, I must be thirsty. But we don't have those internal signals. So we often don't know we're hungry until we're starving, and we often don't know we're full until we're absolutely stuffed. So I think there's a lot of kind of things that, play a role in it. But there's really strong evidence that we are more likely to have, eating differences, but also eating disorders as well.
Now, is it from being like in the biology of sort of ADHD or whatever neurodivergent condition, or is it life with? Would be the main thing.
I think it's not. I think it's both, actually. I think that there are differences in our brain and our body that explain why we're more likely. So things like interoception, things like the dopamine seeking, the sensory sameness of things, eating the same thing over and over again, or not eating because your safe foods aren't available. So I think that they're core things that we might experience if we're ADHD or we're neurodivergent. So I think that's part of who we are, and that's part of the ADHD or the neurodivergence. But I think also life is stressful just generally. There's a lot of pressure. If you don't have a diagnosis, or you haven't discovered you're autistic or ADHD, things can be stressful. There's lots of masking at work. There's lots of burnout. We're navigating EHCPs and tribunals and special schools and all those sorts of things. So I think naturally we are more prone to be anxious and also burnt out and lower in mood. So then that goes hand in hand with, that self-soothing, that rewarding ourselves with a nice meal or a glass of wine or a bar of chocolate, whatever our go-to is. So I think it's not just about our biology, it's about, the world around us as well. If we feel dysregulated in the world, food, the crunch of a food or the sweetness of something can help us feel grounded and can help us feel almost sort of like soothed. So, it's both sides really.
Yeah. It's surprising how much of a difference your surroundings can have on how you act, or how your ADHD presents, basically, and the intensity of everything. I was okay with food until I became a dad, and to a autistic ADHD sort of child, and then finding out I'm ADHD as well, and living that life under one roof. Yeah, food became an issue where it never used to be before. And yeah, so it's very interesting, linking it with the dopamine and making it how it makes you feel. And I used it all the time to make myself feel better. But yeah, I can understand how the life we lead really does increase the risk of eating too much or not eating enough. So okay.
Yeah. And a huge thing in our household is lack of sleep. So my son has not slept since the day I brought him home from hospital. He's always struggled with sleep. And the impact that sleep deprivation can have on your eating the next day is huge, in terms of you're going to go for sugar, you're going to go for carbs, all those things to give you that energy that you don't have because you're woken up 5, 6, 10 times the night before. So there's all these different aspects of neurodivergent life that we don't always take into consideration. It's the lack of sleep, it's the stress, it's the burnout, it's the masking. By the time you get to the end of the day, you're in the kitchen and the thought of preparing a meal or putting things together or cooking is just so overwhelming. So you go for something that's quick and easy.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually realize that. I think I've probably always had issues with food and eating, but I didn't realize it until my son, because I never thought I had an issue with eating. It was when he came along and I was like, well, that's not abnormal with eating because I do that. Or, I'm really particular with my food. So he's really particular with food. And sometimes our way of eating can actually stop us from recognizing that our child has a struggle with eating because our eating is so different
Yeah.
that we're just seeing them do what we do and we just think, well, doesn't everybody do that with food? And actually you start to realize, no, everyone doesn't do that with food. You do things a little bit differently. But yeah, that was a huge learning curve for me, because I was going around saying, well, my son's very particular with food, and you talk about a 2 or a 3-year-old and it's like, well, most 2 or 3-year-olds, they go through that kind of fussy food stage, but they're not really particular. They can go to parties and eat the food. It's not every child struggles in the way that he was struggling, so it took me a little while to notice it in him. I think it was when it got really obvious that I noticed his eating getting a lot more restrictive and beigeur and blander and missing whole food groups. But before that I just thought, oh, he's got preferences, he's particular, and I didn't really think too much of it.
Yeah, as children, because people talk about kids all the time, and those things about oh, fussy, oh, he's particular, or oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's 4, of course he's just gonna like sweets, and it's all this
Yeah.
sort of presumption because of the age or because he's a boy or a girl, but there's never really a lot of thought about really what's going on until you're in that sort of position,
Mm-hmm.
where actually there's something going on, there's something wrong here, we're struggling here. This
Yeah.
is not, this is above what we talk about,
Yeah.
and then you sort of go into it and think, okay, there's things we need to work out and things we need to kind of support here and
Yeah.
understand. So when it comes to having ADHD, um, is there a particular eating disorder that is kind of we're more at risk of having, or is
Yeah.
it all of them, or is it just like sort of 1 or 2?
Yeah, I think there's a higher risk for all of them. I think it depends what sort of type of ADHD you have. So if you are more inattentive, you're more likely to have a restrictive eating disorder because you might forget to eat, or you might not have those sort of signals. So that's when you might look at the more restrictive eating disorders. If you're more impulsive or there's more hyperactivity there, then you're more likely to go for the sort of loss of control things like binge eating and bulimia, where you compensate after a binge. So I think it depends on what is your main sort of presentation of ADHD and what you're struggling with the most as to what eating disorder you might develop. And also, some people develop an eating disorder and then later it can morph into another eating disorder. So you can have binge eating disorder or bulimia, and then something happens with your blood, you go to your GP, they say your cholesterol's high, and that to you is a black and white message, and then you restrict all of the foods that your usual safe foods, and you become really restrictive because the doctor's told you you're not allowed to have those foods because your cholesterol's high. So then what could be more of a binge eating presentation then goes into more of a restrictive eating disorder. So yeah, it just very much depends on what's going on in life and your health and your brain, really,
Yeah.
what eating disorder you're more likely to develop.
So the one, I mean, a lot of the eating disorders are quite well documented. They've been talked about, whatever, for
Mhm.
decades and decades and decades.
Mm.
But one that hasn't been talked about that much, and one, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, is
Mhm.
kind of new to be classed as a disorder.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's been going on for, forever, but it's classed as a disorder, is ARFID.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Now, can you explain what ARFID is, please?
Yeah, so it is new. It's only been in the diagnostic manual for about the last sort of 13 years. So before that, it was seen as like extreme fussy eating, sensory based eating. But ARFID is ARFID. It stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. And there's a high overlap with autism and ADHD. There's three subtypes. So you've got the sensory based restrictions. So that's where people don't eat, they're missing large parts of their diet because of the taste, texture, smell, temperature of food. You've got the fear of aversive consequences. So sometimes someone might have a choking episode, or they might have a stomach bug, or they might eat something and have lots of pain. And then they associate with every time I eat, I'm going to choke, or I'm going to be sick, or I'm going to be in pain. So they stop eating lots of different foods that might not have even been the trigger. So they might have choked on, say, a piece of bread, but then they cut out anything that makes them think of a piece of bread, whether that be potatoes, pasta, that sort of thing. And then the third subtype is the lack of interest in eating. So these are people who genuinely do not get pleasure from eating. Eating is a chore. They don't feel hungry. They don't look forward to eating. They would rather drink 3 supplements a day than eat food, or if they could take a tablet and not have to eat and it would meet all their requirements, they would choose that option. So although there's the three subtypes, people tend to fall into multiple of them. So you might have one person who might have a lack of interest in eating, but also really strong sensory sensitivities to food. So what happens is the diet just gets more and more restrictive, and then you start to see things affected like growth, weight, nutritional deficiencies. The family can't go out to eat. You've got to take your own food when you go to stay with friends or family. So it has a huge impact on you physically, but also socially as well.
Okay. Oh, that's an alarm going off. Sorry.
It's all right. I didn't even hear it.
Oh, you didn't hear it? Okay.
No, no, no,
Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
no, no.
Um, okay. So with ARFID then, how do you know? So when you think, I mean, I guess if you're, even like relatively sort of clued up, there's a issue with eating. But
Hmm.
how do you get to know if it is ARFID,
Hmm.
or if it's just not as bad as to be called ARFID? Do you go to someone, or is it?
Yeah, you can. I mean, with eating disorders, it's really tricky because a lot of GPs don't really know about eating disorders very well. They will know if they've worked with people before or they've got a personal connection to eating disorders, but often I hear from clients that first experience is quite difficult because there's a lot of misconceptions around eating disorders.
Right.
You can't have an eating disorder because your weight's not low, or my uncle had that problem, and he just got over it. There's a lot of really strong misconceptions, and I think it's that continuum, isn't it? So you have got fussy eating, and all children go through a fussy eating phase. Around 2 or 3, they start to realize that there's danger and things out there in the world aren't always 100% safe. So they start to be a little bit more cautious with their eating. But I think if that fussy eating typical phase lasts well beyond 2 to 3, and you're finding that actually as your child gets older, that eating is getting more restrictive, which is what I found with my son. So he was always particular with eating, but then as he got to sort of 3, 4, I started to see whole food groups drop off. So he wouldn't eat any dairy, he wouldn't eat any protein, so no meat, fish. His diet was mainly beige carbs, 1 or 2 sort of salads, and that was it really. Actually, it was all carb sort of based. But I think if if you're finding that their eating is more restrictive than, say, their friends or your other children, and things seem to be getting, the safe foods tend to be getting smaller
Mm.
as they get older, then that's the sort of thing where you'd be thinking maybe it's ARFID. Things like them not eating at school can be a sign of ARFID, or you go to say with family or friends and you've got to take all their safe foods, you've got to cook them as a separate meal. But I guess it tips into ARFID when you're seeing the level of restriction affecting their growth, affecting their bloods, so like deficiencies, or like really, really impacting them socially with things like they can't eat outside of the house, or they're going to parties and they can't eat. So I think there's initial sort of signs there, but then as things get more and more, then you start to think, this is a bit more than just what you typically see with those sort of fussy eating periods.
Can you see someone about ARFID, or obviously any of the others as well?
Yeah, you can do. I mean, technically, most eating disorder pathways in the NHS should include ARFID, but that's not the reality. So like in my county, there is no ARFID pathway for children or adults. So I am effectively my son's dietitian. But there's also no route to assess for ARFID because there is no pathway. So I paid privately for him to be assessed. So it's very much at the moment a postcode lottery. So although ARFID has been in the diagnostic manual for 13 years, people still don't know quite where it fits. It is an eating disorder, but there's also like those skills that sit within, say, the autism and the ADHD team. There's also those skills that fit within the general mental health team. So generally someone with ARFID will sit in all of those different teams. And now we know with the NHS that if you don't fit into a box, sometimes you're kind of pushed. Well, we can't see them about their mental health because they've got an eating disorder. Or, well, we can't assess them for autism or ADHD because they need to have their eating disorder treatment first. So you end up with people sort of being pushed around the system. But the hope is, hopefully in my lifetime, we'll start, it should be, in eating disorder services, they should be seeing people with anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, ARFID, should be seeing all of the presentations, but unfortunately that's not the reality.
It's for me, I'm just thinking, it's obviously a big crossover for the neurodivergent community, and it's treated like the neurodivergent community is treated.
Yeah.
Who can help? I don't know. We can't help because you do. It just seems very much, unfortunately, who can help? Who's the best people? You just don't know, and you end up doing it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You end up managing it yourself, and even when you've got deficiencies and your child's not maybe growing, you do end up literally managing it yourself as their parent, which is really concerning. I mean, you've always got the option of, going to your GP and requesting an out of area referral. Whether that will be successful or not, I can't say, but it is an option.
Yeah.
If they don't have the treatment within your county, you should be able to go to another county. But then in the other county, they might say, we're overrun, we can't support the people in our own area. So it's a bit of a difficult one.
So if you paid privately, who would you see?
So you would see a psychologist and a dietitian. So the psychologist would support you around the anxiety, because there's a huge component of ARFID that is around anxiety. It's either anxiety around something bad happening, or anxiety around your food being different or not as you would expect it to be, or it's not the same, or the packaging has changed, or the ingredients have changed and it tastes different. That then alerts your brain that something's not safe about that food, and then you can't eat it. So the psychologist would work with you around, your thought processes and the gradual exposure to food, but then the dietitian would work with you around the balance of your diet, the nutritional quality, that very gradual food exposure, thinking about supplement drinks, or if you need a vitamin and mineral. In a amazing service, you'd also see an OT, who would be responsible for like the sensory aspects of food, and thinking about sensory diet in terms of like what you need to be able to feel calm and within your window of tolerance to then be able to eat other foods or try other foods. But I think generally a psychologist for the thought processes, and a
Yeah.
dietitian for the more practical diet aspects.
That's, I mean, I see that,
Mhm,
in our family, and obviously it's in a lot of
mhm.
neurodivergent families as well. And we get to the point where, as long as they're eating something,
Yeah.
now I don't know if that's the right way to think about it, but it gets to the point where you've to get to the point where you think, before there's an issue, before
Mhm,
there's something else going on rather than just fussy eating.
mhm,
Because you've done all that. Oh, you need to eat. You need to eat. You've gone through those stages.
mhm,
Eat healthy. Eat healthy. Eat healthy. Um,
mhm.
but you end up getting to a point where I don't care. Well, I do care, but
Yeah.
I don't need to be pushing this on you anymore. As long as you're eating, as long as you've had X amount of calories by the end of the day,
Yeah.
somehow, okay,
Yeah.
then I will sleep better tonight. Okay,
Yeah.
that's because it's yeah, we gone way past the whole how much fiber and how much
Yeah. And what
whatever.
is your plate balance and all those
Yeah,
sorts of things.
we're
I think,
way past that now.
yeah. And that is the advice for ARFID. So ARFID does not do well with pressure. So pressure and expectation, that whole, I had it as a child, but, sit at the table till you finish what you've eaten, or, clear your plate. That is the worst thing for ARFID, is the pressure and the expectation. So um, it really is about whatever they can eat is good. For example, my what we now nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and my son has had 4 squares of chocolate, dark chocolate, and 2 Oreos. That is all he's had today until we go out and get him in McDonald's, and then he'll get fries and chicken nuggets, and that might be all that he'll eat today. Is that McDonald's meal, dark chocolate, Oreos? But we have days where his diet is just all carbs. He has not eaten a piece of fruit for about 3 years. At one point, he was having a punnet of strawberries a day, and then he got COVID and he was sick. He sicked up the strawberries, and it all came out red, and he cannot eat strawberries now. So he doesn't eat fruit. He doesn't eat vegetables. He will tolerate some vegetables in his Singapore noodles from our local Chinese, or some peppers in my chili con carne that I make him. But he does not eat vegetables. Like, he
Yeah,
won't have broccoli on his plate or carrots or anything like that. If it's small and it's within something that he really, really likes, he can have it. He'll have peppers and mushrooms on a pizza from Pizza Hut or Domino's. Um, but you wouldn't catch him eating an apple or having a salad, a side salad. Um, yeah,
yeah,
we went to Tenerife for a week, and that was really, really stressful. It was all inclusive, and the whole week he just ate chips and cucumber slices. So he would have a little bit of cake at breakfast. The like little loaf slices they have. He'd have a slice of cake, then he'd have a small plate of chips, maybe 2 or 3 small plates of chips, and 1 or 2 slices of cucumber. And it was so stressful because he was swimming and running around all day. So I knew he wasn't getting enough. You could see he wasn't getting enough. He was getting really tired. But all he wanted was his jacket potato at home that he has, that I
yeah,
make for him. So yeah, that whole they'll eat when they're hungry doesn't apply to ARFID. And that is probably the worst thing you can do, is say, well, we'll just limit their foods and they'll eat something. If they've got nothing in the house except, fruit and vegetables, they'll eat it. They
no,
won't.
they won't.
They'll avoid it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And actually do themselves some harm in the process of avoiding it.
yeah. that's we don't want that either. So,
No.
listen, it's been really fantastic talking to you. And to be fair, I would really like to talk more about ARFID
Okay. Yeah.
with you. I'd love to come back on again
Okay.
to go
Yeah.
through that. That would be
Yeah.
fantastic because I think there's a lot more to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Definitely.
but it's been, like I say, it's been really nice. It's been really nice going through all the different things
Thank
and
you.
how to look at the supplementations and things like that.
Mhm.
It's an important conversation to have, and I'm glad we've had it.
Yeah.
So I hope people listen to this and they take it on board.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you for having
Um,
me. Thank you.
and for everyone who's listening, as always, guys, be good, be kind, and remember, you're not alone. Thank
Mhm.
you.